Coffee Pot Conversations.
Bonjour et bienvenue to Coffee Pot Conversations, a podcast about Paris, a place that regularly ignores my plans and improves upon them. Most episodes work in a similar sort of way. So, my name is Paul, and this is episode 5.9, Parks and Gardens of Paris, Part 2. If you've not seen Part 1, don't worry, go and watch it afterwards, or stop, watch that, then watch this. It really makes no difference. It's just literally two parts, covering two different aspects. One covers sort of parks and one kind of covers gardens, hence Parks and Gardens. If you're new here, you've probably seen the kind of way that I do things already. If you're an existing follower, listener, subscriber, then great, thank you, welcome back. Let me know how you think I'm doing, or maybe don't. So, I guess now that's it. It's just time for the news. So, here's Paul with the news. Thanks, Paul. If you've been near La Défense recently, you might have noticed the UGC cinema looking particularly festive. They are currently celebrating the 20th anniversary of the month-long run of cult classics. That ends on May the 26th. It's been giving the business district an unexpectedly cinematic atmosphere after dark. Seeing The Incredibles, which was on Sunday, or The Iron Giant, coming on May the 17th, is a world away from the usual office grind. Tickets for these special screenings are generally at the standard cinema rate, so that's around $15.50. But it's the mixed crowd that really makes it. Long-time film buffs rubbing shoulders with students discovering David Lynch for the first time. It's turned a transient corner of the city into somewhere people actually linger long after the office has switched its lights off. Over at the Grand Palais, the Kilmer Af Clint exhibition has officially opened its doors as a joint venture with the Centre Pompidou. Running all the way through to August the 30th, the response has been massive already. Mostly because the large-scale abstract works predated the men who usually get all the credit for the movement. A standard timed ticket will set you back €15 or €18 if you want the flexibility of an open ticket, but it's worth every cent for the sheer scale of the canvases. It's a kind of show that forces a slower pace, and the local cafes are currently packed with visitors trying to wrap their heads around the Swedish mysticism over a second Café Noisette. While the art may be grand, the forecourt of Notre Dame is smelling a whole lot better than usual right now. The Bread Festival, or the Fête du Pain, is back from May the 8th through to May 17th, and they basically built a giant pop-up bakery right in the heart of the city. Entry is completely free. You can watch artisan bakers competing for the best baguette in Paris, which is a title currently held by Sitamparopilai Jigathampipan from the 14th, which he won back in February. But more importantly, you can get your hands on fresh samples. It's a very grounding contrast to the high-concept art world, reminding everyone that in Paris, a well-made loaf of bread is just as much of a masterpiece as anything hanging in a gallery. Look out on Sunday for the construction of the largest Eiffel Tower made of bread by Milieu Ouvrier de France. And did you know that the Fête de Paris, Fête de Pain, is a unique and emblematic event in that it is the only professional gathering permitted to take place on the forecourt of Notre Dame. And that's held at Kilometre Zero of France's road network. Looking ahead, we're moving into that lazy May rhythm. We have Ascension on Thursday, and we also have the Saint-Germain Jazz Festival kicking in from May the 11th to May 24th. Most of the outdoor performances are free to catch, but the headline concerts at places like the Saint-Germain-des-Prés Church or the Odeon range from €10 up to €92 for the big names. It's that familiar market of the season where the evenings get longer, the music spills onto the pavement, and everyone collectively decides to be slightly less productive. It's not so much about a schedule, it's more about finding a terrace and letting the music find you. But finally, the big one for the calendar is the European Night of the Museums, which this year falls on Saturday, May 23rd. From 7 p.m. until midnight, over 80 Parisian museums, including the heavy hitters like the Louvre and the Musée d'Orsay, open their doors for free. It's always a bit surreal to see the Bourse de Commerce lit by thousands of candles, or to wander through the Grand Palais in the middle of the night. It remains one of the most chaotic and enjoyable nights of the year, with the city feeling briefly less structured than usual. I'm not going to say keep the coffee hot, the pot warm and the conversation cool, because I'm going to save that till the end. Just wait. But now this.
Coffee pot conversations.
I remember the first few times I went to Paris for exploration purposes. Yes, the tall, overbearing buildings were amazing, as were the variety and quality of shops. The roads were wide and everything was, well, Paris. It all made sense. The wide doorways to the residential premises, the children's clothing shops and schools. It was a few years until I actually saw children in Paris. My trips had always been midweek, but then I saw a group of children being led, escorted and followed by adults. There were no uniforms, and the children were around 5 or 6, I would say. And what does this have to do with the topic of this episode? Nothing directly, yet indirectly, I'll tell you. Every time I walked past the Green Park, I always checked what it contained and if it would pass the approval of Rory and Jasper. Obviously, as their ages increased, their needs changed. From experience, I know they don't play together regardless, and it's only my parental mind that sets the requirements. I do the same in London. Does it have goals, a climbing frame, a zip line, fitness machine, wooden obstacles, trees? The parks I look at for them in London are pretty much large patches of grass with any or all of the aforementioned play detail. The parks in Paris feel different. I'm not talking about big gardens, les jardins, but the smaller areas purposely built and randomly located. These are the more common in the outer arrondissements, and you can find them near residential blocks that aren't always typically Parisian. However, there are those others, the meticulously maintained larger ones, the ones that are like the London Great Parks, not just a field or a paved path surrounded by benches and a strip of grass. No, not next to a recycling container. But just like Paris and her history, there are extremes within herself. The day-out picnic parks and the after-dinner parks. These smaller parks are more like respite areas for me. I could possibly tell you of 5, but there are a whole lot more. They do seem inconsequential, and yet they can be a tranquil oasis in a city that might not stop. Obviously at night these close, but by then I'm having dinner or sitting down in a bar to do some writing or observing. Don't be fooled, these smaller parks aren't just parks, not in the English sense of the word. These parks are generally squares. They're not all square, nor are they all parks. Looking around Gare Montparnasse in the 14th, going south to the Cimetière de Montparnasse, we have Square Ferdinand Bruno. We also have Square l'Espérance du Nord, enveloped by Place Gilbert Perret and Place Jacques Denis. None of these places are particularly endowed with grass, yet tucked behind the town hall, the calmness and escapism they provide can be essential. I remember walking through the Jardin des Plantes around the Grande Mosquée de Paris, and then taking a few random turns, because this is where I discover Paris, going from A to C and then reaching B. What I didn't know at the time, and full disclosure, it's only now that I'm researching things that I discovered where I was. I walked past Square Capitan, a sandy dirt box, or a dirty sandbox, with a nice play area for children and benches for grown-ups. What's amazing about this place, which again I didn't actually know until researching for this piece, is that it's also backing onto the Arènes de Lutèce, just off Rue Monge. The sand may actually have been from the time of the Roman Empire. And going back to the point of the Square Park, within the grounds of the amphitheater, it has a Square des Arènes de Lutèce encompassed within. This is primarily a pathway from one entrance to the next. Incidentally, one end is at the Place Émile Malle. Okay, one more is a square just tucked by Église de Saint-Germain-des-Prés, just in Place Juliette de Récourt, who was a singer and actress born in 1927. She passed away in 2020, but during her career, she was a ballerina at the Opéra Garnier, a cabaret singer at Le Bouffe sur le Toit, appeared in a 1957 film The Sun Also Rises, based on a book by Ernest Hemingway, sang Sous le ciel de Paris, being the third performer to cover it a few years before Edith Piaf, and she was actually the inspiration behind the Beatles song Michelle. which I'm not going to sing, so there we go. Moving back to the square, Laurent Prache within, and sitting squarely by the entrance is a named statue, Guillaume Apollinaire. Now, who is this chap and why is his head so special? Apollinaire died aged 38 of Spanish flu in Paris in 1918, a forefather of Cubism and forebearer of Surrealism. He was a creator of the calligram, where words are arranged to create an image pertaining to the subject of the poem from whence they came. This is fascinating to me and my masters in creative writing brain. Anyway, whilst living in Paris, before his poetry really took off, he was a well-published art critic, gaining friends along the way. August 21st, 1911 saw the theft of the Mona Lisa from the Louvre on a day it was closed to the public, but open to contractors and art copiers. Obviously, nobody saw a thing, but Apollinaire's constant criticism of the Louvre's lack of security led the police, who had no leads, to arrest him. During his 5 days of incarceration and interrogation, people say he wrote some of his best pieces. Picasso, who was also under suspicion during this time, denied knowing Apollinaire, despite their long-standing friendship. As a sign of remorse, regret, or simply an act of remembrance, Picasso donated the statue in 1959 to the city of Paris, leaving it unsigned, but honouring Guillaume Apollinaire. Incidentally, Apollinaire was released and Vincenzo Perugia, a former employee of the Louvre, was caught whilst trying to sell the Mona Lisa to an art dealer in Florence in 1913. He was trying to return it to Italy, so he believed it had been stolen by Napoleon. Maybe he should have studied art history a little more at school. He was sentenced to 1 year and 15 days. He was released after just 7 months, and he served in the First World War. He was held as a prisoner of war for several years and died in France on his 44th birthday on October the 8th, 1925. Right, this is now the last small square I'll mention, and it's already actually been spoken about in the previous episode, Parks and Gardens Part 1. It's in the 5th arrondissement, just across the river from Cathédrale Notre-Dame de Paris, opposite Place Jean-Paul II, enveloped by Quai de Montebello, Rue L'Orange and Rue Saint-Julien-le-Pauvre. It is Square René Viviani. You can hear a little more of Viviani's story in the episode about Parks and Gardens, and maybe do that once this episode's finished, but honestly there's not much said about him and it won't affect your understanding of this section. But this square, just around the corner from the new Shakespeare & Company, houses the oldest tree in Paris. The tree, over 420 years old, was planted in 1601 during the reign of Henry IV, the husband of Marie de Medici and grandfather of Louis XIV. It was the year after the birth of the future Louis XIII and is from the seed brought over by Jean Robin from America. The tree is a black lotus, a robinia, a false acacia. It was originally planted in the herb garden of the Faculty of Medicine, but that garden closed in 1617 and génial, the Jardin de Princes, was created as a replacement. It's claimed by historians that a collection of plants came across from the original garden, so much so the second oldest tree was planted by Robin's son. It's also a robina, and also mentioned in the last episode. Walking past the tree in its original site, included in the Via Turonosis, part of the Camino de Santiago Christian pilgrimage for the Middle Ages, which tends to start at Tour Saint-Jacques, the only remaining of the Saint-Jacques de la Boucherie Church, which famously starts in season 3 of this podcast. However, the tree is now firmly rooted in Square René Viviani, and somewhere I have a photo of the church of Saint-Julien-le-Pauvre with a few branches of this ancient tree, photobombing in a very creative and artistic manner, including the new chestnut entwined oak bench. This ancient tree is nothing in age compared to the oldest tree in London, the Totteridge Yew in the churchyard of St Andrew, which is claimed to be over 2,000 years old. I must mention at this point the illegal felling of the Sycamore Gap by Hadrian's Wall and a 4-year prison sentence given to the 2 men responsible for the crime of chopping down the 150-year-old tree. Before moving on, the oldest oak tree in France is 1,200 years old and contains 2 chapels. Yeah, it's in Saint-Maritin in Normandy, and it's the topic of a film called Le Chien de Louville, and is a comedy released in 1981. The oldest tree in France is actually an olive tree in the Roquembrune Cap Martin, 2,000 years old, and a real testament to my French pronunciation skills. Okay, big park time, and not even an inclusion of either Bois de Vincennes nor the Bois de Boulogne. These may be another episode further on down the line, but I don't have any firm plans for them at this stage. Maybe as a cameo if I ever do an episode on the Paris Marathon. The first park I'll mention, as I was on the topic of running, is the Parc Monceau. I don't know if we say 8¼ hectares or 20 acres, but that's how big it is. Now, I possibly didn't plan it properly, but when I stayed around the corner on Rue de Londres, I went for a 5k run from the Hotel de Geneviève to the park. Around the park 1.5 times, and then through some more streets to get the distance in. I actually popped to a Doré boulangerie on the way back. They unfortunately didn't accept my Apple Watch payment, so I had to run back to the hotel and back again to get my wallet and pay. All good training, probably. The park, located in the 8th, is surrounded by hotel particuliers and elegant Haussmannian apartments. It's this that will allow us to see well-dressed children and their nannies, whilst the lake, pyramid, bridge and beautiful colonnade make it a nice distraction for the runners of the local area. Created in 1778 by Philippe d'Orléans, Duc de Chartres, for those wondering, he was a cousin of Louis XVI. In an unexpected twist, the writer/painter Commentaire was charged with creating the English-style garden. The rotunda, located at the entrance at Boulevard de Courcelles, is actually a remnant from the original days. The Mur de Fermières Généraux was a 24-kilometre wall built for taxation purposes. The wall of the Farmers General was so that goods entering Paris, as it was back in the late 1700s, would be taxed. Anyway, parts of the 5-metre high wall had various entrances, and one of which was this rotunda. The ground floor was for the customs house, and the upper floor was an apartment for Philippe d'Orléans, or the Duke, to his garden. As an aside, in 1797, Parc Monceau was a site where André-Jacques Garnerin performed the first ever silk parachute jump. Going up 3,000 feet in a hot air balloon, then a slightly turbulent descent with his 7-metre diameter parachute. It had a rigid frame that was folded up like an umbrella, all while attached to the balloon basket. Guess it had to start somewhere. Naturally, the park has undergone several transformations because what happens in Paris with revolutions and Haussmannian both playing their parts. With the extension of Paris and the removal of the Mur de Fermières Généraux, Parc Monceau was bought by the city of Paris and turned into a public park. The story of the Duke of Orleans is another issue. Down on my favourite island, this one, in the 14th, is Parc Montsouris. It's gently located near the Périphérie to the south and tucks around the corner from Stade Sébastien Charles, now the old stadium of Paris FC. They struck a deal with Stade Français, the rugby union team, to share Stade Jean-Bouin for around 5 years, with only the Croix de Ferrère separating Paris FC and Paris Saint-Germain. The local rivalry suddenly becomes more local. It's a distance of 0.12 miles, translating to less than 200 metres. This is closer than Dundee United and Dundee in Scotland. Notts County, Nottingham Forest, half a mile. Liverpool and Everton, with a whopping 1.4 miles between them. Then there's also Chelsea and Fulham. However, PSG are looking at getting a new ground soon, with their plans to expand costing £270 million. City Hall has said that they wouldn't sell the site that Parc des Princes is situated, meaning the rent would still be £1.5 million per year. And that's not how Qatar Sports want to spend their money. PSG may well move out of the city and go to either Massy to the south or Poissy to the west, where they already train. Although nothing is in stone at the time of writing this, there are plans already drawn up for the new 90,000-seater stadium, costing £740 million. No decision on the sale of the site is to be made until the autumn of 2026. Okay, back to Parc Montsouris. And it's another park with running memories for me and Nev. We stayed in a hotel opposite when we took part in the Paris 10K. It was here I did the triple and wanted Nev beside me as I closed my running season in Paris. Half marathon, full marathon, 10K. We didn't run in the park, and Marshall were trying a marketing campaign for their Bluetooth speakers. Or maybe it was a strange and expensive Parisian scam. We didn't take it up as we were heading to the main part of the arrondissements for a bite to eat. I digress. Quelle surprise! Incidentally, the park is also over the road from Cité Universitaire, another grand garden to enjoy. I'm harking back to my Olympics episode from season 3, episode 3. Still, take a walk there if you get the chance. Parc Montsouris Previously the Montrouge quarry, as well as the necropolis, they say over 6 million were buried there, until good old Napoleon III decided to create a few parks around the city. And we all know the story of the modernisation and expansion of Paris under his reign. No? Okay, well, check out the episode, Parks and Villages, in this season. So the 15-hectare English-style garden was inspired by the London parks. The name Montsouris apparently comes from Montsouris, referencing when mills in the Bièvre had rodents as residents. The Bièvre is a river now hidden under Paris, and guess what? Yep, it'll be another episode. One entrance to the park is on Avenue de la Tunisie. It used to lead to the Bardo Palace, which was a Tunisian pavilion built for the 1867 Exposition Universelle. Unfortunately, it burnt down in 1991. It wasn't the original location when it happened, as it was moved and reassembled in the park in 1869. It then had a municipal meteorological observatory installed in 1872. However, nearby is a Marais du Sud, marking the passage of the Paris Meridian line. Almost. Because of redevelopment within the park, it's actually off by about 70 metres. Why let nature and history stand in the way of modernisation? Jean-Charles Dauphine created Parc Montsouris, and under Napoleon III also developed the Bois de Boulogne, Bois de Vincennes, Parc Monceau, the Champs-Élysées Gardens, and created another park, Bouchermont, which I'm not going to talk about as I've not been there. Within Parc Montsouris is a 2.5 acre lake, which around opening day apparently emptied, and in despair the lake contractor, it was a construction issue, decided to commit suicide. I don't think it's by drowning. So, as with most Parisian parks of this magnitude, there are sculptures, bridges and many nooks to spend your time exploring, as well as quite remarkable trees. Some are between 30 and 40 metres tall. This goes a long way to creating the lung of air that Napoleon III wanted to create, cleverly located just the other side of that wall of the Farmers General mentioned earlier. The work on the park started in 1867, took a brief break during the Franco-Prussian War, and restarted in 1872. 1876 saw a petition to open up the park, and it was partially opened in 1877. In 1878, for the Third World's Fair, it opened fully, apart from the lake, which happened in May of that year. And we know what happened with that rushed completion job. The bandstand wasn't always a bandstand. It was originally built in 1881 for the International Electricity Exhibition, and obviously reassembled in the park. That was in 1884 as a shelter for walkers. By 1889, it was confirmed as a bandstand. It's still in use today. So, how do you make a bandstand in Paris? Take away their chairs.
Coffee pot conversations.
And that was episode 5.9, Parks and Gardens of Paris, part 2. Yep, I've learned how to give the title name after having watched it. So, this is where I would normally conclude and possibly talk about what you've just seen or listened to, but I'm not going to, because if there's anything that you don't understand, watch it again or email me 5.9 at anenglishmaninparis.blog. If you don't wish to email, you can find me on Instagram at An Englishman in Paris blog, and you can find a photo that relates to this episode and just leave a comment there, a question, and that's it. I mean, you can DM me if you want, but that has different connotations. I tend to ignore those, which is really wrong of me, so leave a comment, makes for better viewing. Talking of Instagram, team leader Jim mentioned me in his story the other day about a dirty Sunderland mug. I did reply to him saying that I drink from a coffee pot conversations mug now, and this time last week was the first time this year that I'd actually washed it out. However, I'm now going to splice in with an Instagram story now. The last time I did one of these for Instagram was during the Paris Marathon, I think 2023, during my Instagram lives. So please follow the_rave_attack. It's Team Leader Jim. Team Leader Jim, I'm sorry, I don't read your stories or view your stories because I'm not on Instagram as much as I should be. But I will try and change that from season 6 onwards. That's for Team Leader Jim. So what else? Thank you to Luxembourg, Denmark and Australia for having me in your charts. I'm still in Luxembourg's charts. All that means is that I'm in the top 250 of views, views and listens. Maybe likes, I don't know. I don't really know how it works. You go to different Spotify's and Apple's and it's all different ways of working things out, so I don't know, but thank you anyway. I am also being watched and listened to across the globe. I haven't necessarily made it to the charts. For those that I haven't mentioned you, so apologies for that. I'm going to try and be better with my thanking yous. But I do want to, don't want to congratulate you. I want to wish good luck to Luxembourg because you're in the Eurovision Song Contest. I did check, did a little bit of research. You were quiet for quite a few years, which is strange because you did win, I think it was 4 back in the 60s and 70s. You've been in it from the start, so I don't know why you went on a bit of a hush-hush, but you came back 2024, and it's your 3rd appearance in it since then. And I wish Eva Marija singing Mother Nature the best of luck. Yeah, Tuesday, the first semi-final, Thursday, second semi-final, Saturday, the grand final. Nev's in Cyprus at the minute, and I'm off to Paris this time next week. I'll be in the middle of my 3-day stay, so I am looking forward to that. That's pretty much about it. So now that leads me to saying Jasper. No, it doesn't. That leads me to saying Jasper. No, I just said that. This leads me to say Jasper. No. Oh my days. What is going on? I need a sip of coffee. It's all gone big tongue. Costa Coffee, actual coffee shop in London. Next week, be the Book Nook. Huzzah! Anyway, it's time for Jasper's jingle.
Coming up on Coffee Pot Conversations.
We have episode 5.10, the best bits. Cut to the chase. If you've got any best bits, email me in thebestbits@anenglishmaninparis.blog or 5.10 at anenglishmaninparis.blog. Let me know your best bits. I will include them if I get them in on time. If not, just email me anyway. And in later seasons, I will mention them. What else? Yeah, I've got a back catalogue of pretty much 5 seasons plus a few extras and specials. I am, as I say, going to be in Paris next week. I am doing season 6, so we've got a few of the remnants of what I did when I went back in November, a few of those, and then we've got some multiple episodes whereby they're just too long to fit into one, because I'm going to try and keep these episodes quite short despite me lambering and rambling on. What else? I think that's it. This is where I struggle to know whether to say keep the coffee hot, warm, and the conversation cool. Rory, it's over to you, or whether to save that for at the end of the news. But this episode, I'm going to tell you to keep the coffee hot, the pot warm, and the conversation cool. Rory, it's over to you.
Coffee Pot Conversations.